Welcome to rpgamepire. I'm David. Thank you for joining me in this how to play video of a new Wander story, The Cult of Barnacle Bay. So if you haven't had a chance, please check out our playthrough video and our review. So this is what many people would call a dungeon crawl. It's a Kickstarter game, and I'm just playing with the core set. There's only so many characters and enemies to encounter in the core set. And the game is basically driven by scenarios. So when you watch the playthrough, we do a one-shot of the introductory scenario, although we could have extended to the campaign if we want. So here's the scenario booklet, I should say the campaign book. And when you open it up, you'll see here that it gives you this one has an Aboveground map if it's in blue. So there's the above ground portion right here, and then you need to, in order to get to the next part, which is below ground, you need to explore the darkness squares that were cast by the evil, I'm trying to remember what he was called again. The evil cult leader, Elder Bane, who basically took over Barnacle Bay, which was a peaceful fishing village. So here's his dark magic here, and there's these spawn spaces here, which you see on the board where monsters will appear, enemies will appear. And so the object will be right here on the scenario. So this particular scenario, the object is to defeat all the enemies, and it includes exploring the darkness tokens before you can go down the ladder and reach the end token, which will be on the below ground right here. So before you start the scenario, you decide how many characters you want to play with. So you'll see in the playthrough we just did 2 characters, which is the minimum. You could play up to 5, and if you do play with less or more, you get so many healing potions. So let me show you where you find that in the rulebook. That is on page 19, and so you'll see that there's also a setup. Game setup starts on page 18, right here, and then you also have to refer to the setup rules in the scenario, and you might have to look at the how to read the scenarios as well. So if you're only playing with 2 characters in this sample here, it says 1 to 5 players, so I guess this chart doesn't represent that, so I don't know about the 5th player part, but we play with 2 heroes and we'll get 2 healing potions to distribute, so we'll take 1 each. If you have 3 heroes, there's only 1 healing potion to give to 1 hero to hold. So you'll see here I'm playing tank, and I have my 1 healing potion, and each character has starting equipment. And so tank comes with a shield, which is an offhand, and that's in the item description part of the rulebook where it talks about that, where it talks about all the components for the first 17 pages. It's on one of those pages. So that goes in my one hand because I have a hammer here, which I can wield with 1 hand. Now some objects take 2 hands, and if that was the case, I couldn't have the shield. So, but I can hold both of them. Now, Julie would be playing Flynn, and he comes with a crossbow. And that's a 1-handed item as well. And I'll explain what the stats are in a minute on the items. But we both start out at 0 level. First level, 0 experience. And we'll get experience as we defeat enemies. So in this particular scenario here, we will start here. Now, if we were playing with 4 characters, the spawning would go a little different. Because now once we pick our characters, get our starting items, we also have our starting initiative markers here. And now we got to generate the enemies. So you get 1 spawn card per character in the game. So we're going to draw 2 spawn cards. And we get 1 spawn card for each large board. So there's only 1 large board here. This is 1 board. Here's a smaller board. So I'll draw the spawn cards right now. Actually, I should shuffle these up to make it a little different. Okay, I'll just take it from the bottom half here. Oh, I should explain that this is the darkness deck here. This is the event deck. Here are the enemies' initiative cards. Here are the dice we will use. There's a treasure token here that can be obtained with a level 1 treasure. So for the first about 7 scenarios, you'll look up here for which treasure deck that you draw from. So you see how it says scenario 1, that means you'll draw from the level 1 treasure deck. And eventually you'll get to level 2 treasure, and then all the way through here, level 3 treasure. So I believe there's at least 21 scenarios in this campaign. But let's generate the enemies. So two spawn cards for 2 characters and 1 spawn card for this board. You'll first start with the spawn marker here closest to the start space of the characters, and then you'll go clockwise. So since we're playing with less characters, we're only going to be using this spawn space here and here. By the way, here's the ladder down right here. So let's do that. So the first one is 2 archers. So the archers go right here. Now each space can hold 4 normal sized pieces. So that includes grunts, archers, and casters. You can have 4 of them there. But if a brute comes in, it will take up 2 spaces. And then there are bosses, mini bosses and bosses which will take up the whole space. Now that matters in case you respawn a space and it's full. So let's say there was 4 archers here, and we were going to, for whatever something happened that we had to respawn the space, and a brute was to come in this space, it would push aside 2 archers closest, well, you get to decide where they go as the characters, so it would push 2 other characters out of the way into a close space. So close spaces are adjacent spaces that are legal. You'll see here is a red dotted line. Nobody can cross those dotted lines, and enemies cannot move into darkness. In fact, darkness blocks line of sight. In addition, if Flynn was to fire his bow, let's say the space wasn't blocked and there was 2 archers here, there was no red line here, Flynn could not fire into this space because this space is blocked since it's full. And that goes for the enemies too. They can't fire through full spaces. So anyway, we've generated this space with 2 archers. So right away I find the archer card from the initiative deck, put it right here. Now we need 2 more spawn cards. A grunt, only 1, that's not too bad. It goes over here because we're going clockwise. Next spawn space for the board, we get 1 grunt and 1 archer. 1 grunt, 1 archer. So I got to find the grunt, which I didn't get yet. So now the enemies have been generated. We shuffle the initiative deck just for the beginning of the scenario, and I lay them out like this. Oh, by the way, I should point this out. We're playing with the basic side of the initiative. This side, depending on where the enemy is or a character is, you'll get bonuses depending on your initiative. So you'll get a +1 defense die here, a +1 attack die, and so you get different bonuses. But we're not playing with that side, and that's advanced rules that you can play with. So we're just playing with the basic side where you don't get any bonuses depending on your initiative. All right, so the grunts will be going first, followed by the archers, then Flynn, then Tank. Now there is a way to change this order. The characters can do that, which I'll explain here in a moment when it gets to their turn. So by the way, the darkness tiles, just before I forget, you have to move on to them to find out what they are. I made sure that the 3 different types are here. So when a character moves on to this, you'll get an event card, which I'll model here in a moment. Now why is it red? Because in some scenarios, they'll have a deck. They'll tell you what darkness cards to put in, and there might be 1 red darkness card in the deck. And when that comes up, it triggers a certain objective. So that's why red ones are differentiated from white ones. And by the way, when you do reveal a darkness, you see how normally this spot would be impassable? It represents an impassable space. The darkness basically overrides what's underneath that space, and it's something that people can move over after the darkness is revealed. And this space would be a chest, which you can get treasure. So normally you wouldn't know where these are. They would be random, but those are the 3 types. Let me explain a little bit about how enemies work, how their stats work. So this is their defense. That means that if I was doing a melee attack, I would have to get an axe or a crit or an axe shield, as long as there's an axe, to overcome that defense. In fact, that character, the grunt, will absorb 1 axe. I would have to get a second axe in order to do 1 damage, and that this person has, a grunt has 3 health, so they wouldn't die yet. I would actually have to get, if I could, on 1 turn, let's say I got a crit and I re-rolled it, that's an automatic success, and then got another axe. If I were to roll that, would have been 4 hits, and I would have killed them in 1 action. Now, the attack means that enemies don't roll dice. They will automatically hit. This is a melee attack, so they can hit characters in the same space or any close space that's adjacent. So close means in this game, the keyword means the same space or adjacent spaces that aren't obstructed by red lines. And you can't, by the way, make sure I mention this, there are no diagonal attacks with melee, or there's no movement. I'm sorry, let me back up. There are no melee attacks diagonally, and there is no movement diagonally. Although you can do ranged attacks, you can compute that diagonally, and I'll go over line of sight with that in a moment. But back to the enemies. So this one has 1 defense. Archers are weak. You can hit them pretty quick. They're a ranged attack. They only have 2 health. You have the casters. They have 3 health as well, and they also do ranged attack. However, if you're close to them, again, if you're adjacent to them or the same space, you'll have -1 attack die, because I guess they make you kind of sick. And brutes are these really nasty bear sharks that have 2 defense, they do 2 hits, and they have 5 health. So that means if I'm rolling, I would have to get 2 axes on a melee attack and a crit, or just another axe, or get bow attacks here if I was doing a ranged attack, just to even do 1 damage to him, because he's going to absorb the first 2 hits. So those are the enemies, how they work. Now when you look at characters, one rule to remember is that when you pick your character, you're going to start out at level 0. And every level 0 character has 2 abilities, so you must choose which ability to go with. So Tank here, now this is hard to read for me on the camera, but he has this ability and this ability, and I'll read it off camera here in a second. But he has 5 health, he has 2 defense dice, and 2 knowledge dice. So when you roll knowledge, you need to get axes or crits, and that usually comes in when an event card is revealed, where you have to roll to avoid something good or bad, to make something good happen or avoid something bad happening. So again, 5 health, 2 dice for defense, and 2 dice for knowledge. Now I'll explain his abilities in a moment. Flynn, it's a little different, has 4 health, 2 dice for defense, and 3 dice for knowledge. So he's a little smarter, but not as strong. And he also has 2 abilities. Now when he gets to, actually we start out at level 1. I said level 0, it's basically level 1. When you get to level 2, each character will get a +1 action. Each character normally has 2 actions. But when you get to level 2, you have 3 actions. And you'll see that you'll have to choose one of these abilities when you get to level 3. Level 4, choose one of these. Level 5, you get this one. So let me read those abilities real quick so you have some context here. So Flynn's ability chooses 1 now. He gets focused shot. So that means it gains a pierce with ranged weapons. Now since he starts with a crossbow, when you want to look up any of these abilities, you look up at the almost at the very end of the rule book on the keywords page right here for what these means. So pierce means that with his crossbow, he's able to ignore 1 defense on the enemy. So when Flynn is rolling, he could ignore this 1 defense and this 1 defense and reduce this by 1. So if he gets 2 range hits, for instance, normally the shield would take off this one, but because he has pierced, he'll do 2 damage, and this grunt would have 1 life left. The other thing that Flynn can do, if he wanted to choose it, would be Lucky Strike. So Lucky Strike is basically like a rebound effect. It means that all readied ranged weapons gain a cleave on a crit. So if you roll a crit, and right here, it rolls a crit, that means that for each crit, that a nearby, let me make sure I'm reading it right. I want to make, causes 1 additional enemy within the same space as the target to automatically suffer 1 wound. So if he gets multiple crits, the way I understand it, you can cause 2 additional wounds, and you can split those up against other enemies. So if there's, like, for instance, 3 grunts in a spot, Flynn can choose 1 grunt to fire at. Let's say he gets 2 crits, and then he would re-roll these. When you get crits, gets a 3rd hit, a 4th hit. So that grunt would get 4 hits. The grunt, now, because he took Lucky Strike, that means he doesn't have his piercing. So the first hit is absorbed, but there's still 3 left, and that grunt would die. And because he got 3 crits, was it 3 crits or 2 crits? I don't remember what I just rolled, but if it was 2 crits, he could split it up against the other 2 grunts in the space. So again, this is where the cool part of being, when you choose your character, you get to decide which ability you want to go with. When you look at Tank here, Tank also is going to choose one of these. He can do a vicious counter, which means when he gets a crit on defense, so if he's being attacked, he causes 1 wound to close attacking enemies per crit. So it has to be a melee attack base, or it could be a ranged attack that's close, because you can do ranged attacks that are close as well. But the point is that if he's defending and he gets a crit, he hits that person back. Or he can do a shell slam. He doesn't hit him back, by the way. He causes a wound. So shell slam, this is the other ability he has. He can do if he gets a crit on an attack, he can knock down the target, which is cool because if it's an enemy, the enemy would have to spend its next action to stand up. And while it's knocked down, if there's any other characters that can hit it before it stands up, it would be at -1 defense. So again, both characters have to decide which one of those. They each have 2. They have to choose one of those to go with. All right, so I've explained the starting abilities. They have their starting items. They're at level 1, 0 experience for Tank and Finn. They both have a healing potion. Here they are on the starting space. We've spawned the board according to the number of characters in the one board. Oh, I forgot to mention why is this here on the initiative tracker? Well, this is the morale. So the cool thing I like about, sorry about that, this game is that there's no player elimination. If you lose your health, you get knocked down. And then you must, on your next turn, roll 1 die. And if there's another character, any other characters in the same space with you, let me make sure if it's same space or close. Again, it's these little rules that you can sometimes forget. Again, there's no index here, so I have to find it. Okay. 1 die, by rolling 1 die per hero in that space. So they have to be in the same space. So let me explain. Let's say Tank takes his 5th hit, 5th wound, okay, and he's right here. He gets knocked down. When that happens, the morale goes down 1. If you get down to 0, the game is over for all players. So that means that basically the characters can be knocked down 4 times. It could be the same character 4 times. It doesn't matter who it is, but you only have 4 morale. And if you lose all 4 at the beginning of the game, you have 4. And there might be some scenarios, I guess you have 5 or 6. I don't know which ones those are. But if it gets down to 0, all players lose the game. So here I am knocked down. Finn And I'll explain actions in a moment here. If Flynn was in the same space, on Flynn's turn, he could use his healing potion to revive him automatically. He'd have to spend an action to use that healing potion. Tank would stand up. The healing potion would heal half his health. And at 5, half is 2.5 and you round up. So he would heal 3 and only have 2 wounds left. But if it wasn't on another player's turn that spent the action to revive him, if it comes back to Tank's turn, Tank must roll. So he'll roll 1 die for himself and 1 die for each character present, which in case is Flynn. He can't use the healing potion because he's downed. Someone else would have to use it on him. Flynn would have to use his. But anyways, I have to get a crit. So if I roll here and I didn't get a crit, I could try next turn. But say I did, I would stand up and just like a healing potion, I would heal half my health. I would stand up and then I could move. He can move freely and move freely 2 spaces without incurring a dodge roll. So I could try to get away if I wanted to 2 spaces. I'll explain what dodge is in a moment. So there's 2 ways to rally. You either do it on your turn and you roll a die and hope to get a crit, or someone comes along and see here. The only way another hero could rally him is they spent a healing potion. Yeah, that's the only way to do it. I just wanted to verify that. Again, I'm sorry about the pause. I just wanted to make sure I'm giving the right instructions here. So just to make sure I didn't confuse you. On Flynn's turn, if he has a healing potion, he can rally Tank. If he doesn't have a healing potion, Tank has to do it on his turn, and he'll roll 1 die for himself and 1 die for each character in the space. So that's what happens when you get downed. And remember, when you get down, you'll lose your morale. And so you want to make sure that you try to avoid taking more damage than your total health. All right. So let's do a little bit of turn sequence here. What actions you can do as a hero and how combat works. And that would basically be the overview of the game. So let's go back to the very beginning here. We have the 2 characters here. So we look at the initiative track. The grunts go first. Are there any grunts that can see the heroes? The only grunts there are these 2. And so if they can't draw a line of sight, and it's from the back edge to the back edge of where the heroes are. And if you see here, it crosses a red line and crosses darkness, so they can't see. This one can't see from here to here because there's nothing here. We assume that it's a red space. So these grunts don't get to activate. So now we go to the archers. The archers, from here to here, they can't see through the darkness either. So, and neither can this one. So the archers don't go. So no enemies engage the heroes. So now we go to the heroes. So Flynn can go. Now each hero has 2 actions. What can you do with your actions? So you can look at the back of the quick reference guide here. You can move, attack, melee, or use a ranged weapon or use a spell. Well, a lot of spells are ranged, for instance. You can trade items in the same space with another character that, let's see, or a close space. It could be adjacent to you. Step up and fall back. This is how you change the initiative order, which I'll explain in a minute. You can interact with the space, such as opening up a chest and rally. So when you are downed, you can rally. Remember, I covered that. So let's go over some possible options here. So Flynn is going to move into position to fire his crossbow. Now, when you take a move action, you can move 2 spaces. Most spaces only take 1 movement point. However, there is water on some tiles where if you move into it, it ends your movement. And to move into another water space would cost all your movement as well. To move out of the water costs all your movement into the adjacent space. So water really slows you down. So Flynn goes into here. Well, he's going to say, I'm taking a move action. I'm going to use one of my 2 movement points to move into here. Now I can stop and fire at these archers or move into here and keep on going. So Flynn used his first action to move 2 spaces, because he can move 2 spaces with 1 move action. His best course of action would be to attack these archers. But I need to explain dodge now in case I forget later on. Let's say he already started here and he's been wounded so much that he needs to move away. So as soon as he just elects to start moving away, any enemies that can hit him and that have, for instance, a range attack, they can see him and they could hit him. If there was a grunt here, the grunt could also hit him as he moved away because he was close. So it's basically a free attack. So it's basically against 1 hit, no matter how many enemies can hit him. Right here, in this example, the grunt could hit him for 1 hit, and each archer could hit him for 1 hit each for 3. So for a dodge, though, it doesn't matter how many enemies can hit him. He needs to make a dodge against 1 hit. So he looks at his defense. He has 2 defense, and he has to get a crit to avoid that, and he didn't. So he'd take 1 wound, moving away. Basically, they're firing arrows at him, and they swing at him before he moves away. So anytime you're moving, the other situation could be that tank, because he does not have a melee attack, I'm sorry, he doesn't have a range attack. As soon as he moves out here, he goes 1, 2. He's coming around the corner. By the way, enemies can't, they can engage you, but they can't fire around corners. As soon as he moves out here and moves again, he's going to have to dodge because they're going to get a free action on him. So he would have to roll, his defense is 2. He would have to roll a crit, and he did, so he didn't take the damage. Because he has to charge up and hit, whereas Flynn can sit back here and fire. So now that I think about it, it would be a bad move for him to move 2 spaces. He should just step out and fire. That way he doesn't have to roll a dodge to move an extra space he doesn't need to do. So that's what he'll do. So he'll move 1 space for his first action, not use the other space, and now he'll fire his crossbow. So his crossbow gives him 3 dice. He is going to take piercing as his ability for this whole scenario. That way he can ignore the first armor on an enemy. Now he has to choose his target. So he's going to choose now this archer. Now if there was a grunt here, it does matter which one he chooses because he could say the grunt instead. So now he rolls. Or Julie rolls, I should say. And got 1 ranged hit to hit the archer. He no defense, and even then, if the archer did have defense, it would pierce it. Needed 2 hits to kill that 1 archer, so only did 1 wound. It's too bad, because if it would have gotten either a crit or another ranged icon, could have killed him. So not a good roll. So this archer is wounded. So you mark it with that, with a wound. And so each character only has 2 actions, so Flynn is done. Now we look on the initiative tracker here. Let me take off picture in picture. Actually, I'll move it up so we don't have to do that so much. So here's Flynn. I'm sorry, here's Tank. Tank's next in initiative order. So Tank goes now. Now because Tank has to run up, first he's going to take his move action, first space. He doesn't have a ranged weapon, has to move again. So now he's going to have to do a dodge against the archers. So Tank has 2 defense, has to get a crit, and failed. So he takes 1 wound charging up against the archers. Let me just make sure of something. Okay, so a shield would work as well. Not just a crit, but also a shield would have blocked it. Again, it's only against 1 hit. It doesn't matter that the archers normally do 2 hits because there's 2 of them here. It's 1 hit that you're rolling against with your defense. So he failed. He didn't roll a shield or a crit. All right, so now he's here. Now he's going to do a melee attack, and his target's going to be the one that's already wounded. So let's take a look. His hammer does... Oh, I forgot. His starting gear for tank is a +1 defense, so I get to roll another die here. So I believe that's what it was. Okay, he did block it. So I forgot to add in my object here. So he did block that wound. I mean that hit, and did not take a wound. All right, so now he's going to target that archer here with the 1 health. He rolls 3 dice. He needs to get crits or axes. Got 1 axe. So fortunately, archers don't have any armor. So the hit goes through, becomes a wound. And so I knocked down, I destroyed that archer. And then I go up 1 experience. So archers, grunts, and casters are worth 1 experience. Brutes are worth 2 experience. And then bosses and mini-bosses have different amounts that I'll look up here real quick. Since I'm going over experience when you eliminate an enemy, I got to find where it is in the rulebook. Okay. So bosses, well, mega brutes are worth 5 XP. You get 1 experience point, I believe here, for each time you hit, do a wound to a boss. Is that right? I believe I read that somewhere. Now I don't remember for sure. I believe that's how it is with bosses, so don't quote me on that. All right, so moving back to this attack here. So he used 1 action to move here. Had to dodge because he was moving up on the archers who could see him, could fire at him, I should say. And then he did an attack and killed the archer that was wounded that Flynn hit on Flynn's turn. So that ends Tank's turn. So now we go to the top, the grunt's turn. None of the grunts can still see. The archer can. See, the archer can see Flynn. I'm sorry, can see Tank. Now, if they were both in here, how do you do the targeting? Well, it's the character that's at the top of the initiative track. So if they were both in the same space, Flynn would be targeted. If they're equal away, like this, it would be still the same situation. If it's within the same number of spaces. But it's not that way, so the archer is going to target Tank. So the archer does 1 hit. Tank has his shield and 2 defense, so he has to roll crits or the shield. He did block that 1 hit. Doesn't matter if he rolls again, because actually I didn't decide what type of thing he would take. He would probably take the knockdown, which means that when he hits with a crit, he knocks down his enemy. If he had taken the vicious counter, because the archer fired at him in close range, if he had taken this ability, he would be able to do 1 wound to the archer. But he didn't take that one. I personally would take the knockdown one. But he blocked it. So moving back here. So the archer just went. This archer doesn't do anything because he can't see. He's not engaged. He can't see the heroes. Okay, so the archers just went. Now it is Flynn's turn. So just to model an option that you can take as a player, you can do what's called a step up or fall back. Let's say Flynn does not want to go next and actually wants to change the initiative order. So Flynn can spend all of his actions to fall back. So Flynn would go at the bottom of the initiative track, right here. And by the way, if you get downed, something I forgot to mention, your character will also go at the bottom of the initiative track. So Finn's turn is done, but we resume the same order. Now it's going to be Tank's turn, and then Flynn will get to go again. So Tank's going to go next. Tank is already, doesn't need to move, is going to target that archer. Gets 3 dice for the hammer. Missed. Uses a second action to target that archer again. And got a crit and a hammer. Gets to roll the crit again. And so that's 2 wounds. 1 for the hammer, 1 for the crit. And as you know, the archers don't have any armor. So he is destroyed. Now, let's say I only did 1 hit. He'd be knocked down and take 1 wound if I only got the crit and didn't get that other hammer. So let me show you here. So you would show a knockdown by having the enemy be on its side, and I only did 1 wound. But in this case, I did 2 wounds, and so the archer has been destroyed. Tank has used both of his actions. He gets 1 experience for killing that archer, and his turn is done. So when we go next on the initiative track, Flynn now gets to go because he fell back, and so he's going to take an action to move here and go into the darkness. So I'll flip it up. So now we generate an event. So let's see what the event is. So this is a lady of the Puddle. It says right here, you see a siren looking back at you through a magical puddle. So now you got to check your knowledge. So Flynn has 3 knowledge. Has to get axes or crits. Got 3 axes. So they got the max result there. So we look back on the card here. You attempt to communicate with her. She is pleased and gives you a gift to draw 1 treasure card. Now if I got a 0-2 though, you draw your weapons and attempt to attack the puddle. The puddle turns into a geyser of water and launches you into the air, take 1 wound and suffer knockdown. So that would have been bad if I didn't get enough axes. So that's what can happen with darkness tiles. As I mentioned before, you can get events. But Flynn got a treasure card, so let's see what he got. The Mighty Gloves, which is a +1 attack, and because it's green, you don't you put it in your inventory. You don't have to equip it. There's no hands here. So now with his crossbow, he'll get +1 attack. So he'll get to roll 4 dice instead of 3. So I equip it right here. So as the game moves on, we go through the initiative track again. Can the grunt see him? No. Can the archers see him? No. Okay, Tank goes 1, 1, 2, and then he'll stop here. They'll be able to see him. No, from here to here. Nope, they can't see him. So he'll stop here. Flynn will catch up, and then they'll go through the initiative again, and then Flynn will step out, fire, and then Tank might have to step up and do another dodge to attack them, which means now this guy will be able to come down on the initiative. So the other thing that you could, as these are destroyed, another thing that can happen is that when you, in order to move into here, I would have to do a move action to move into the treasure and do another action to pick up the treasure, and then I would draw a treasure card. If you move up a experience level, so the other thing I haven't covered yet is that when a character goes up a level, you'll see here a level 2, and you'll spawn at the spawn space closest to the hero. All other heroes will get experience points equal to the level. So let me just make sure of just one thing. Just want to make sure that when you go up a level, is it equal to the previous level or the current level? So now, again, I need to find it in the book. Again, because they mix up when going through the game's components with rules, it's spread out in different areas. Okay, so it's here when they go over Hero Dashboard. So on page 6 is where you'll find out how to handle when someone goes up an experience level. So let me verify that real quick. When a hero is the first to gain access to a new experience tier, all other heroes gain experience based on the experience tier that the hero has reached. For example, when a hero reaches tier 2, the party gains 1 XP. Tier 3 gains 2 XP. So it's basically the previous level. So if Tank would be the first to move up to level 2, Flynn will get 1 experience. And then we got a spawn for Tank going up a level. Now if Flynn gets to level 2 as well, you don't spawn again. It's only for the first time someone gets to a level 2 or a level 3 or a level 4. So let's say on the board here, we killed the last grunt here, we were both here. And then we have to, Tank goes up a level to level 2, so now we got a spawn. 2 archers would appear again right here because, oh actually no, the closest spawn space is right here. They would appear here. And then, by the way, as you kill enemies as they're removed from the board, they come off the initiative track. So in this example here, all the enemies would have been removed from the initiative track, but because I went up a level, I spawned it, so now archers appear here. The nice thing is that that Tank went up a level. He might have had an action left and he could do something against them, and if he didn't, Flynn could go first before the archers. But if it was the other way around, where Tank used his last action and went up a level, the archers would get to go, and then it would be Flynn and Tank. So that can happen, is that you can move up a level and then enemies appear and you don't have a way to attack them first, they'll attack you first. So that is the basic overview of choosing your characters, setting up the scenario, making sure that if you're moving away or moving towards something that can attack you, that you have to roll dodge when you're moving, that you only pick 1 ability when you choose your character. The other things that you may want to know about that I didn't go over is that when you trade an item, you can trade an item with a hero that's close, but that costs an action. When you pick up a treasure card, either through opening a chest or revealing it in the darkness, you can immediately put it in your inventory and switch things up just with that item. So let's say, for instance, I already had a shield and a hammer, and I picked up something that I wanted to switch out the hammer. I can do that when I get a new treasure card. You could step up. That means you go to the top of the initiative track, or fall back, which I modeled. You could interact with the space, which was, again, getting treasure or getting objects. By the way, one thing that points out, in some scenarios you got to carry objects. And so if you get down, you dropped an object that might be important to win the scenario, and then you got to spend an action to pick that object back up. You can drop an object, which costs an action, and then someone else would have to come in there to pick it up, which would cost an action. And then rallying on your turn is an action as well. So there's other things, statuses, effects that can happen. You can get cursed, sleep, poison. Those are things that happen with other creatures, which doesn't happen in the introductory scenario. So that is the how to play of just the introductory scenario of Wander, the Cult of Barnacle Bay. If we get 100 likes, we'll play more scenarios in the campaign. Way a campaign works is that all of your experience, you drop down to level 1 again and to 0 experience. But you get to keep your items. Most of your items, I believe the temporary items that you have, like potions or anything that's a one-use item, would go away. But you do keep your most important items, like any weapons you gained or other permanent things. So that's cool about that with the campaign. If you do play one-shots, there is a particular area of the rules that one-shot scenario rules here that if you just want to skip ahead, so for instance, if you want to play level 3.5, you'll get 9 treasure cards to distribute amongst the 9 level 1, 9 level 2, and 3 level 3. So if you want to jump ahead, you can like go through the decks, and then it says here you can trade 2 treasure cards to get a new draw if you don't like what you drew, and you distribute amongst your characters. So that's pretty cool that you have that if you want to play a one-shot and skip ahead. Because obviously if you're a campaign, you would have acquired that stuff over time. So, this is RP Gamepire. I'm David. Please remember to subscribe and like. I appreciate you watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.